In the late 1800s, there was a middle-aged man who lived in the woods by himself. The only companions he had were 300 dogs. It took a day and night to travel into town outside the forest, so he only left his two-room cabin to get food and other supplies when he really needed it. One night, the man looked in his cupboard and realized he had no food left in his cabin. Cursing himself for being so careless, he decided that it was too dark to start for town or go hunting now. He would just have to go to bed hungry and wait until tomorrow. About an hour later, a man was sitting in his main cabin in his room, cursing himself for not going into town sooner, when he heard a peculiar noise. It sounded like scurrying, as if an animal was running about his room. His 300 dogs were outside sleeping under the porch like they always did. The man searched for the source of the noise. Behind his recliner, he saw the strangest animal he ever laid his eyes on. The animal was the size of a cat with a long pointed face like a fox. All its teeth were razor sharp and the fangs were powdered from its mouth. Its eyes were big as an owl's and bright and green, so bright they seemed to glow in the dim light. The animal had paws that looked like tiny human hands, only with long black claws. Its ears were enormous like a jackrabbit's. But one thing the man noticed most about the strange beast was its enormous tail. He guessed the tail was 6 feet long, coiled around itself. The creature regarded him calmly for quite some time as he stared at it in awe. He had never seen something or that looked remotely like that. Just then, the thought came to him he would kill it and have it for dinner. A quick flash, he rushed in the kitchen and grabbed his butcher knife. The creature, realizing what was happening, let out a terrifying hiss, froze the man in his tracks. It almost sounded like a human scream. The man chased the thing around his house for a full minute before finally it slipped away through the hole in the log in his wall. The thing barely escaped, but not before the man cut off his tail. He heard it go screaming away to the forest. Being a shrewd man, he realized that the tail had some very good meat on it and decided that he would skin it and cook it for dinner. So he did that. He went to bed quite satisfied with himself. But in all the excitement, he forgot to patch up the hole in his wall. That night, the man awoke to scurrying around the main room. Now, his bedroom was separate from the main room of his cabin. He had built an addition on himself to have more private living space. He could hear the scurrying around the main room, even though the thick bedroom door. As he listened, he realized the hint of cold fear had forgotten to patch up the hole in his wall. Then an eerie singing voice rang through the air of the cabin. Tailypo, Tailypo, who's got my Tailypo? The man was so frightened that he jumped up and grabbed his shotgun, threw open the door, and was hoping to catch whoever it was messing around with him red-handed. All he saw was a black shadow scurry fast as lightning through the hole in the wall. Shouting, he sent his dogs after it. Hearing them go barking off in the night, the man sat up for an hour. Only 2 dogs came back. Thoroughly scared now, the man blocked up the hole the best as he could with a stack of logs and let the dogs into the house to sleep in the main cabin. Then, trying to ease his racing mind, he went back into his room and tried to sleep. Not 10 minutes later, the sound of logs crashing and his dogs whining, cowering like scared puppies reached his ears. There was the scurrying sound again. Then the eerie singing voice sounded much closer now than it had been last time. Tailypo, Tailypo, who's got my Tailypo? The man once again jumped out of bed with his shotgun, but just missed the black shadow running through the reopened hole in his wall. Fierce and frightened, man sent his 2 dogs after the creature. An hour later, 1 dog returned. The man brought and moved his heavy chair in front of the hole in the wall. The dog into his room to sleep in his bed. He tried to calm himself. Not 5 minutes later, the sound of the heavy chair scraping across the dirt floor of the cabin reached his ears. The voice, now sounding very close to his bedroom door, sang out, Tailypo, Tailypo, who's got my Tailypo? Terrified, the man flung open his bedroom door, sent his dog after the creature. It never returned. Desperate, the man blocked the hole with all he could find in his room. He bolted his door shut, locked himself in his room, and sat on his bed with his shotgun. Not 3 minutes later, scurrying sounded reached his ears again. The voice, now just outside his bedroom door, and sang out, "Tailypo, Tailypo, who's got my Tailypo?" The man remained silent, shaking with fear. They scratching at on the door, and then the doorknob slowly began to turn. "Tailypo, Tailypo, who's got my Tailypo?" The man aimed a shotgun. It wasn't loaded. It was useless against the terror. He threw it to the ground. All too late, he realized that he could have used it and hit the creature, but now it was across the room. He was so afraid to stand up. The door was wide open. A black shadow scurried across the floor. "Tailypo, Tailypo, who's got my Tailypo?" The creature climbed up to the foot of his bed, staring at him. The glowing green eyes, it was smiling, showing its razor-sharp teeth. "Tailypo, Tailypo," it said. "You've got my Tailypo." It climbed across his leg, reached his stomach. The man, terrified, managed to scream out, "I haven't got it. I haven't got your Tailypo." The creature spread his claws with his human-like hands and placed the claws against the man's stomach, grinning, and whispered, "Yes, you do." A month later, a woman from town noticed the man hadn't come here in a very long time, so she decided to check on him to make sure he was okay. As she was riding through the forest, she found a ghastly sight, a dead dog on the side of the path. She rode on, but soon found another dead dog, and very soon a third. Shuddering, she hurried along the man's cabin, making sure he was okay. With a scream, she found him in his bedroom, his sheets soaked with blood, a look of horror frozen upon his face. His stomach had been cut open with something razor sharp. She rode back to town with all the speed she could to inform the people of town to get a man a proper burial. As she was riding through the trees, she heard an eerie singing voice singing through the trees, "Tailypo, Tailypo, now I've got my Tailypo."